I have never watched Frieren. I hear it's great, but that's not why we're here. Somebody posts their struggles drawing Frieren. I believe that's the name of the character, right? It's kind of like Naruto is Naruto, Frieren is Frieren, right? Let me know in the comments. But they were struggling drawing the character from this very tough angle. I can relate. When I was starting out drawing my own manga, Apple Black, and honestly, drawing in general, drawing from certain angles was always very difficult. This being S-tier difficulty. In many ways, it still is to this day, but there's a lot of things I do to make it far easier for me. In fact, I've actually made a video on this channel drawing faces from this very difficult angle and other angles. If you want me to update that video, let me know in the comments below. Like this video. If we get like 1,000, 2,000 likes on this video, I will update it. But I'm gonna do one in this video, redrawing it and show you guys how to easily tackle drawing a face from this angle with the Frieren character. Many other artists have kind of thrown their hat in the ring. As someone who does a lot of tutorials, I thought, you know what, why not? Especially given that I've learned it, I've been there when it's been difficult, and I've used this angle in several panels within my manga itself. Now make sure you watch this video to the end where I share a secret technique that will make drawing faces from honestly any angles easier and easier over time, where I kind of morph the figure until it fits. And as you can see with all these illustrations, from all these other artists who kind of got in on the fun, creating memes, as well as tutorials that are helpful. They're all kind of correct in their own way. It's all art, it's all subjective, and it depends on the facial features that you choose to use for Frieren, as well as your art style and the camera angle. In fact, even the way the character is being positioned. All of this will come into play, but just make sure you watch till the end. But before that, we'll do a strong basic foundation so you understand the fundamentals to make it work. Apple Black Volume 1 to 5 is available. You can also read it on Webtoon Originals. Let's get to it. Starting out, we want to form, say, the naked, less detailed mannequin of everything, and we'll just start with the circle. Think of this as the cranium, and we're going to be looking at the character, again, from underneath, and we're assuming they're raising their head, maybe looking up at the sky. Once you understand the mechanics of how it looks normally, with no details, and again, understanding your art style, then you can worry about everything else. Once you have that, you think about the face. If we look at a face from just head on, there was like an indent right here, and then another bump, right? And so when you think in that way, we're going to have another circle. This time is going to be a little bit more oval. It could be almost whatever round shape you want. Just stay with me for a second. Once you go there, around where they meet, you can then have a little circle here to represent the ears. And then here you have a little bump, because even though it's from underneath, the face is tilted a little bit to that direction. We're not looking at the head straight on. And depending on the features of this character, this other bump, which is essentially the cheeks, the face cheeks, get your head out the gutter, bumps out this much. But depending on the art style, the upper part of the head could bump less. We can then extend this because there'll be a little bit more head behind. The ear is just taking most of this area. You have this line kind of like so. It's like face, cheek, and then jaw. And then we cut it. From the ear over here, and change color just so you see it better. You can have a line like so. And so with this dashed lines, you can kind of see how the jaw connects. And then the neck over here, kind of looking up. The head will usually, just if you think about it, almost like we can see through everything. The head, the back of the head, the full head now is elongated and continues completely, right? And it'll go in a little bit, and now the character is looking up. You think about the nose, depending on your art style, again, the nose could be, you know, if your face is like this and your nose is like that, you kind of imagine this triangle looking at it from underneath, which would kind of be like so, right? You can just kind of break everything down into shapes and it'll help. And so when you draw the nose, you'll kind of see where if we did have eyes on each side, the other eye is going to be completely blocked. So a lot of times, part of the struggle with drawing from this angle is that you're trying to draw everything, when honestly it's actually easier for you in the sense that some facial features will kind of be blocked. You actually don't have to draw it. But because in the original one, you want to draw both eyes, or at least you can, in some cases you would see both eyes, but it might be blocked by the nose depending on how big the nose is or the art style of it, right? Imagine if this character had some Usopp stuff going on, then we definitely wouldn't see it. But we're factoring in the facial features the shapes of these features in the art style. And for the Frieren art style, it looks like the nose is just kind of like a little bop. It's almost not really there for real. And so the nose that I've put here is kind of more my style. Nose can just kind of have a little bump. Just a tiny bump. It all really depends. It also depends on how steep the angle is, how much the character is looking above. In some cases, they might not be looking above, they're just looking straight on, but the camera angle is in the way, and in that case, we'll see some of the torso block. So these are things you have to consider. There's foreshortening happening, so consider what's going to be blocked and what isn't. Now, considering this art style, I know the eye is going to be here. Even if I did it with my art style where, you know, if I'm just doing a basic face, part of the other eye would be blocked and then the mouth would be somewhere here. From this dummy that we're using for Frieren here, we can start to morph it to look more like a Frieren character. So the ear over here obviously has the whole elf thing going on. The facial shape that we talked about with the cheeks, how much cheeks and stuff like that we're gonna see, like face cheeks. Again, from this angle, there's stuff you're just not gonna see as much, right? This part of the head, the forehead, we're not gonna see it that much because it's gonna be blocked just because of that camera angle we're seeing from. All these things are to be considered. So reduce the opacity there and let's kind of draw over it. For Frieren, I believe it would be pointy jaw, so it's not trying to be too realistic. Very thin neck. Sometimes you can actually now maybe turn the drawing a bit so you see it. And then the ear, it's gonna be like so. Straight forehead. General idea of what the eye is going to be. In these two spots right here, little sockets. Based off of the style, I kind of know where eyelids and things like that are going to be placed. Have the other eye, draw it for now, but keep in mind that it'll probably be blocked later. Then the nose, in this case, the nose is actually not going to block the eye that much just because of the style, and the nose is very small and pointy, but we will have it blocked a little bit. Because honestly, that's where a lot of the difficulty comes into place. And, you know, I want you to learn from this tutorial a little bit. So I might tweak the art style just so we get to play with the nose a little bit more. And the mouth. Like so. It depends on how you want to approach this. The mouth could be like so. If we were drawing the lips in a more realistic way and you see the upper lip, we would actually see more upper lip than lower lip. And if the camera angle was in reverse, that would be the case. But because of this, again, because of this art style, you don't actually have to worry about a lot of that as much. Eyes are not open too wide, but you know what, let's change that a bit. Lashes, eyelashes going in that direction. And then now, we've pretty much done the hard part. You know, we'll kind of connect the jaw a little bit. I think her face is a little bit softer, so the jaw actually probably even starts a little sooner than that. In this case, now we're still morphing the face to get what we want. Her head shape is also probably not that elongated, so it can be smaller, right? Not all head shapes are the same. Some people have longer heads and some people don't. So you're factoring that while also factoring the art style. And then now we can add the other details. You're keeping in mind that this is the front of the face. So we know that this happens in the middle, and so the middle will be somewhere here. So you go up there, and then you connect. At this point, getting the character done is pretty much solved. We're just adding in the details, and I'll be back once I'm done adding in all these. Adding the eyes, and you want to make sure from this angle, if they're looking straight ahead, the pupil is not just exactly in the middle, it's a little further behind in a way, almost closer to the dead center of the eyeball. And then because her eyes are relaxed, everything's kind of split in half. And then now I'm adding the details that really make the character who they are. You want gravity to work with the hair in the direction where it's pointing to the ground. So you see that with her ponytail as well as her earrings. And then usually once you're done with this very detailed sketching phase, you can then go on to inking. I have several videos on inking on the channel, so you can watch those to kind of understand what's happening. Kind of feel like that's a separate step. Try to think in layers and think in a very three-dimensional way. Even here, where you place the eyes, almost like you're sculpting the character. Where you place it is very important. As you can see, it's on line with the nose. It's like on the same line if you're kind of straighten the drawing a little bit. But sometimes you can have lines to help map it out, as you can see with the orange line. And that can help guide where to put the eye and how you wouldn't draw it straight on. It's almost like everything is kind of curved in that U rainbow way, sometimes more subtle than others. So you got to keep that in mind when inking everything. And so that's what we do. Again, pupil not exactly in the center, kind of shifted to the right a little bit, just ever so subtle. If the character is looking in the opposite direction, then we do the opposite way. Now it's time for my final trick, where you kind of keep tweaking the art and morphing it until you get exactly what you want. Sometimes it looks great, as you saw with all the other illustrations by all the other creators. They all did it in very different ways, and in all their ways, they were kind of correct. And so what we have here actually works. But for me, I'm trying to nail something down. If you see now, Frieren's kind of looking up, but her head is a little bit tilted to the side. Being able to take a step back and look at the drawing and recognize any errors, or maybe not errors, but just stuff that you don't want, being able to make those adjustments is crucial for improvement over time. So here, I noticed a little tilt, but I want it to look either straight ahead or at least maybe tilted in the opposite direction, meaning the nose is actually going to block that other eye even further. If you look at the original drawing, the creator was trying to draw everything and it just didn't work. If I'm being honest, it almost looks like they drew it bad on purpose. So I'm going to duplicate what we have, and I'm just going to keep erasing it and tweaking it until I get what I want. Not that it's incorrect. If I was on a deadline, I would just take this because this works. But I want to tweak it a bit, and that would involve readjusting some of the facial features, maybe even tweaking the style a little bit, and resculpturing the face to a degree, the jaw, the everything. Might have to reposition the face cheeks. When I do that, that might mean I tweak where the ear is positioned and pull that a little bit upwards. Even though the eye is blocked, we're still going to see a little bit of eyelashes, especially on feminine characters or characters that wear makeup. We see more lashes than not. Even less forehead because of this camera angle. And then obviously shifting the ear upwards. When you shift that ear, remember the ear is then what connects to create that jawline. So always keep in mind all of these things are connected. So when one thing changes, just make sure it's consistent throughout the face. This is also a character I've never drawn, a show I'm not familiar with, so it's a tad bit more difficult, but we're gonna make it work. Still want the neck to be accurate, so she has a very thin neck, so I needed to make the head generally bigger. And then I keep tweaking with the lines until I have what I want. I have several videos on how I ink sometimes without a sketch layer until I nail what I want. Usually saves me a lot of time, but it takes a lot of practice. It's not something you're going to be able to do without a refined sketch layer in the early days. I've done it so many times and I've had a deadline to create my manga. So sometimes I just skip the sketch layer, and over time I've gotten better and better and better. That's why you can see me playing with the lines, especially in the cheeks, with the jaw, to really nail it. But it also illustrates how difficult drawing a face is from this angle. Mainly because there's a lot to consider. There might be foreshortening that you're not used to. Some art styles are easier to do in this angle than others. But bottom line, you look at both of them, you guys can actually tell me which version you actually prefer. A on the left or B on the right. But essentially they're both correct, especially for the tutorial. But I think this also illustrates further how, while still being correct, you can have vastly different results like all the artists did. Just a change to the camera angle changes everything. A change to the position of the character, how they're positioned, changes everything. A change to the art style changes everything. If Frieren's nose was more realistic, we'd be doing something completely different. If the mouth was more realistic, we'd be doing something completely different. The ears, the hair, everything. And then lastly, the facial features and what you actually want to have on there and where they're positioned. All of these have to be working in unison. But after that, sometimes when you shade the character, it helps give the illustration depth and volume. Sometimes when you're drawing, you're not sure you're nailing it yet. And you just kind of have to keep going with it and trusting yourself. In some cases, shading can help bring that and make it pop. But the same goes for shading. you have to consider where the light source is. And in this case, I just put it above. But if it was from a different angle, let's say the light source was coming from underneath, we'll be doing something completely different, but it will still help give the illustration some volume and depth. After that, we add the flats and voila. Let me know what you guys think. I think A looks better, just a little bit, maybe because it's a little closer to my style. And now you can compare it with what we started with. For the 2.5 people that made it to the end of this video, I thank you. Shout out to everyone who supports the Patreon. I have a one-on-one mentorship tier in there for those who really want to take this stuff seriously. But there's a bunch of other cool stuff, comic-related stuff, YouTube video, polls, all that kind of stuff. Those who support that help support this channel with editors and so on, but also with the production of the comic itself. Don't forget to Holy Ghost smash the subscribe button, hit the bell so you stay notified each time I upload absolutely anything. Turn on all notifications. Links to everything you could possibly need will be in the description. Check out more videos about Apple Black, other tutorials. There's a lot of fun stuff on the channel. We just hit 550,000 subscribers. Thank you again. Hopefully we get to 600,000. Swipe Manga, and I'm out.